Hi guys, this is Elisa and this is the Knitting Stories podcast, even if this is not a podcast episode. So welcome back, and if you're new, of course, welcome. I am very happy to have you today with me. So this is going to be a little bit of a different video because, of course, as everyone in the knitting world, I think, if you're living, of course, in the northern hemisphere, I am thinking about summer knits. And when I think about summer knits, one of the most difficult thing to do is choose the perfect yarn for a specific project. Because, of course, there are a ton of beautiful knitting patterns for summer and also for spring, but sometimes it's just very hard to find the perfect yarn to go with it, especially if you live in very warm countries where summers could be very hot. In this video I would like to tell you a little bit more about some summer yarn, summer and spring yarn, especially summer and spring fibers. And let me just take my notes because sometimes it's just hard. You have so many ideas and you just need to find the right way to put them into words. So since for me it was a bit hard to choose which fiber was suitable for a specific garment that I wanted to knit, I started to do some research for myself. So I started to browse different websites, different websites and different knitting profiles on Instagram and also on YouTube in order to have some more information about yarns to use in spring and summer, in order to have some more information also about the differences between specific fibers. And so at the end, when I was finished, I was like, first of all, exhausted because of all the information and because of all the things that I discovered, and second of all, I thought it would have been perfect to make a YouTube video about my research, because I think that this could be useful also for someone else. So I would like first of all to underline that this is not a scientific video at all. I don't have the knowledge, I don't have the ability to tell you which yarn is the perfect one for summer, which one is the perfect one for spring, and so on. So this is just my we can say a sort of summary of what I've found out. And what is important to underline is that despite this is not a scientific video, I think it's important to link and to give you some details about the sources that I used and about the sources which helped me find a lot of the information that I'm going to tell you. And the main sources that I used are two blogs. Actually, one is also an Instagram page, an Instagram account, but I don't know if the other one is. So the first one is the very famous New Wave Knitting. So New Wave Knitting, and you will see it appear on the screen, is a very useful blog. So you will find a lot of articles talking about designing, editing, knitting patterns, but also you will find some suggestions about in yarn types. You will find a lot of suggestions also about knitting tools, and also about knitting patterns. So I find this account and also this blog very useful. I follow a New Wave Knitting on Instagram, and I think that her content is very catchy and also is very useful, especially when you're a beginner knitter. So you could learn a lot from this account. And then another blog that I read and that I consulted for this video and for my research is Knitfarius. Again, we have a similar kind of blog with a lot of tutorials, with a lot of articles about specific patterns and tools and so on. So these are my two main let's say sources of information, but when I have used some other sources of information, of course I will link them and I will tell you which one I used. Second of all, I should say that this video is not scientific at all, because it's based a lot on my personal preferences. Of course, as I told you, I started this video because I needed some information for myself, and I know I have some clear preferences when it comes to knitting, of course, as every knitter has. And so which are my preferences? My preferences, first of all, are thin yarns. So when it comes to summer knits, I know that I would prefer to use a very thin yarn without 2mm needles than a thick cotton, for example, with a 5mm needles. Don't even ask me for that. Like, I would never use thick yarns for summer, just because probably I'm used to living in Italy where summers are very hot, and sometimes you don't even want to go out from the house. So yeah, no thick yarn at all. And at the same time, one other thing is that I decided not to include all the fibers, all the spring and summer fibers available on the market, just because this video would have been too long, and just because I think that they are not as available as other kinds of yarn. For example, I think that it's still hard to find bamboo yarn sometimes, even if it's becoming much more common. So I simply decided to divide this video into two categories. We have plant-based, plant fibers and animal fibers. And among these two categories, I've included some specific materials and fibers that I think I would be more likely to use in the future. So for each yarn type, let's get into the let's get into the juicy part of the video. For each yarn type, and for each yarn type, I will tell you some of the major features that I found, some of the characteristics of the fiber, with the help, of course, of the blogs and videos and articles that I've talked to you just some minutes ago. And I will tell you some personal thoughts, why I think that a specific kind of yarn would be perfect for spring, or what bothers me a little bit maybe. I will tell you some yarn recommendations, maybe because I've already used a certain fiber and a specific yarn brand, or I will also tell you some of the yarns that I'm curious to work with, so that if you've already done that, if you've already used them, you could maybe give me some suggestions. And of course, feel free to comment down there if you know any perfect spring and summer yarn. So let's just jump right into it. Let's start with plant fibers. And when it comes to plant fibers, the first one that I think is, of course, cotton. And cotton, so I have some information for you about cotton, and this information comes especially from knitfarius.com. So there are some, it's of course a natural fiber. Sometimes people just, I think that sometimes people just discriminate a little bit cotton because it's very slippery, it's very, it breaks a lot, in the sense that all the threads that make up the the final thread that you need continue to separate and break, and sometimes it could be not a very pleasurable experience when you're knitting. And moreover, they say that it's the less like sustainable kind of fiber when it comes to summer knits, because cotton production requires a lot of water to be produced. So let's say that cotton, of course, has some properties. So it's very strong and durable. It has a lot of drapes. So if you're looking for a very drapey fabric, of course, cotton is one of the, it's perfect. But at the same time, it doesn't have a lot of memory. So for example, if you're knitting some ribbed garment, maybe cotton isn't the best choice for you. At the same time, it's of course always important to knit a gauge swatch in order to see how the fiber behaves when in pattern. So this is my number one recommendation. Some things that I would like to say about cotton is that one of the things that I like the most is that it's very cheap. First of all, so if you're a beginner knitter and you don't know if this will be like your favorite hobby, maybe beginning with cotton wouldn't be that bad. At the same time, it has a lot of colors, so usually when a brand offers a cotton yarn, it does so in many colors, and I just love the possibility of choosing between so many colorways. And at the same time, another thing is that when I wear cotton, it's very fresh, it's very summery, let's say. What I don't like is probably the knitting experience. So I've knitted with cotton like I think 2 or 3 times, and yeah, I don't like the knitting experience exactly because it's very slippery, and I'm a very loose knitter, so sometimes it was not that pleasurable because I continued losing stitches, for example. So yeah, but those are preferences. One of the solutions that I found to this problem is using smaller needles than those recommended on the website of a specific yarn brand. And I would say that these wouldn't matter that much because cotton is very drapey, and when it stretches a lot. So using a smaller needle size could be useful both for the knitting experience and also for the realization of the final garment. So and I also usually use a thin cotton. Now, when it comes to cotton, so I've heard great things about 2 cotton yarns. The first one is Friends Cotton by Hobby, and again, I just love this cotton because of the number of colorways that are available on the website. Like, you want a color, you'll definitely find it. So about the yarn, of course the composition is 100% cotton. It's sold in 50-gram balls of 160 meters each, and the recommended needles are 2.5/3 millimeter needles. The knitting gauge of a 10 centimeters per 10 centimeters gauge is 26 stitches per 36 rows. And one of the other perks about cotton is that it's machine washable, so it's perfect for summer. So when you finish using your t-shirt, your top, or whatever you knitted with cotton, you can just throw it in the washing machine, and that's all. In this case, the Hobby Friends cotton is sold for 1.45 euros. No, I think it's 2.15 euros. So as I was telling you, it's very cheap. It's very, yeah, it's the perfect yarn. Plus, I've heard great things about this cotton because a lot of people told me that it's very soft, and again that the color selection is just amazing. The other yarn recommendation that I have for you, or at least the other yarn that I would love to try because I've never tried it, is Mandarin Petit by Sandnes Garn. Again, look at the color selection, it's just perfect. I just love every color and I would love to knit with all of them. So it's sold again in 40 grams ball and in 50 grams ball, and each ball has 178 meters. The gauge is 27 stitches, and each ball is a bit less cheap than the Friends Cotton by Hobby, because each ball is €5.25. But again, the reviews that I could find on Ravelry of this yarn were all telling me that this is just the softest cotton ever. So now I'm like, I need to try Mandarin Petit. Also because I think that I've knitted only with Sunday among the Sandnes Garn yarns. So this would be very, very interesting, I would say. Yeah, then these were just my thoughts about cotton yarns. Now, talking about linen yarns. Linen is just one of the fiber that is very common when it comes to knitting for spring and summer. As I was telling you, I have some sources. So I read one article which is 10 questions you should ask before knitting with linen yarn of the blog nobleknits.com. And here there are just some informations that I found on this website. So this fiber is 3 times stronger than cotton and second in strength to silk. So linen is perfect for knitting spring and summer weight garments because of its absorbency and drape. And one thing that I should say about linen, because I've tried working with some linen, especially linen cotton blends, is that yes, linen has drape, but at the beginning not that much. I mean, linen acquires a lot of drape and a lot of softness with use, with wear, and with washes. So the more you wear linen, the more you will have drape. Indeed, 100% linen yarn have a sort of stiffness to it. This probably also influences the knitting experience, because working with linen is not the most pleasurable experience at all, because usually a lot of knitters say that linen is very hard on their hands, and I can understand why, because this yarn, this fiber has a sort of stiffness to it. Linen is inelastic, it doesn't have the same bounce, give or spring that you'll find with wool or a wool blend. It's not awful to work with linen, it's just you have to enjoy it. It's either you like it or you hate it. We can start with the suggestions. So as first suggestion for you, I have a fiber that I'm I have a yarn brand that I'm very curious to try, and this is the first yarn that I'm suggesting and I would like to try is Linomuka by Wool & Berlin. And the pictures you will see on the screen here somewhere are not by the Wool & Berlin website, but are from the Wool Done website. Wool Done is a beautiful, yeah, like I love it. It's a beautiful yarn shop in Bologna. So Bologna is the city where I've studied for like 2 years. And Wool Done is one of the most beautiful knitting shops I've ever visited. Like Giulia, the owner, is just is just a beautiful person. She has, of course, also an Instagram account, and yes, this is just a shout out to Giulia and to Well Done. You'll find beautiful yarns coming from especially I would say especially rustic yarn, but very like the choices that Giulia makes for her shop, I think they're very I would say very well thought, and I think that there's a common thread going on from each one yarn to the other. So yeah, it's just very nice. If you have the time, or if you've never visited Well Done's website, please do it, because I think you'll be surprised. So the pictures are taken from Giulia's website, because I think that she's able to capture the true colors of the yarn, and especially because she puts a lot of different colorways and color shades, one close to the other, so that you can choose even on the website the shade that you prefer in comparison to the other. So when it comes to Lino Mucca, I must say that one of the things that I like the most is, of course, again, the color selection, because you don't have just the classical colors. You also have, for example, very bright colors. You have very neutral colors, and at the same time muted colors, like pastel colors. So yeah, you could literally knit with every color you have in mind. So Lino Mucca comes from Lithuania, where the yarn holds a very special place in the culture, and is very popular. And Lino Mucca translates from ancient Lithuanian as life of linen. So I'm reading from the Woolen Berlin website. The composition is, of course, 100% linen, and the weight of each skein is 50 grams. For each skein you will have 245 meters, and you could knit it with 2 or 3 millimeter needles. What is very nice is that the website gives you different information and different gauges for whether you want to knit with one thread, 2 threads, or 3 threads. So with one thread you would have 30 stitches, with 2 threads you would have 25 stitches, and with 3 threads you would have 20 stitches per 10 centimeters, of course. And again, this linen is machine washable up to 60 degrees. So again, perfect for summer. Lino Mucca is 5.50 euros per skein. So the next yarn is Antigone by the Rerum Natura. I'm very curious not just about this specific yarn, but also about the entire yarn brand, because I've never tried working with it. I just have some, let's say, some thread that Giulia by Well Done gave me when I visited her shop, because I told her that I was very curious and I would have loved to knit something with it. So thanks again, Giulia. So again, one of the things that I love the most about Antigone is the color selection. It's perfect, and I think that this is a constant, a common thread among all the plant fibers. So it's very nice. The Rerum Natura Antigone is sold in 100 grams balls, and each ball has 260 meters. For each, the gauge is 22 stitches per 30 rows, and the price is a bit higher, unfortunately, because on the website of the Rerum Natura this is sold for 17.20 euros, which is a lot. At the same time, we should consider that these are not 50 grams balls, but are 100 grams balls. Another yarn that I'm very curious to try, and that I've never tried, is by Elisa hair, and it's all organic, again 100% linen. This yarn comes into 50 grams ball, and each ball has 178 meters. And when it comes to gauge, when you use hot organic with 3mm needles, the gauge is 26 stitches per 34 rows. But the Elisa hair website is always very precise when it comes to gauge, and it offers you also the gauge with for hot organic held with alpaca 1, alpaca 2, and held double. So if you're looking for some information about this yarn, definitely head to the Elisa hair website, because you'll find everything you need. One thing that I should underline about this yarn is that the color selection is not very springy. Like, I don't know, it has a lot of neutral colors, and probably the springier one or the summerier one is linen, but all the other colors are just not for me. And another thing to consider is that in the product description it says do not knit in the rounds as the garment will skew. So, like, what should I do? Because I love knitting in the round. So probably this yarn is not made for me, or at least it's not the perfect yarn to make a garment. Maybe I could use it to make, I don't know, to make a bag, like a breeze bag or something similar, but I don't think that I would ever make a garment with this. Yeah, like the colors and the fact that I couldn't knit in the round is not made for me, guys. However, I think that this is a good option for summer linen yarns, and yeah, it's a bit pricier, on the pricier side, because it comes into 50 grams ball, but it costs 10 euros. 74 Danish crowns are more or less 10 euros. So yeah, this is something again to be considered. Then going on and remaining into the plant fibers, I was thinking that I would really love to try some blends, some plant fibers which are which are blends of plant fibers. So like cotton plus linen or others. I think that you could have, like, since cotton is very drapey and very soft, but it splits, and linen is so stiff but robust, probably you could have, by using them all together or using a blend of the two fibers, you could have like the perfect spring or summer yarn. And this is indeed what I found when I was looking for some information about these blends. And here on the YorkshireFabricShop.com website, I found some advantages of cotton linen blend. So in this case, some of the main advantages are softness and comfort, because cotton blend linen fiber is prized for its softness and comfort, but linen is slightly rougher. When combining cotton and linen, the cotton component adds a gentle touch to the fabric, making it pleasant to wear against the skin, counteracting the rougher exterior of linen. At the same time, it creates very breathable and moisture-wicking garments, so the garments would be very breathable, very airy, and it would be very comfortable to wear this blend, especially if you live in very humid climates. And of course, this will make a very durable and strong garment, especially for the properties of linen. And probably again, because of the properties of linen, the fabric would tend not to wrinkle and shrink, and of course also the cotton could could hold better, because usually cotton really drapes a lot, but linen could keep it in shape, let's say that. And probably the cotton would make it very soft to the skin. So these are just some of the like ideas that I have about these blends, but I've never tried. Actually, I've tried one cotton linen blend, which however was a bit too thick for me, so that doesn't count. So when it comes to suggestions or yarns that I would like to try, of course I have to name Sandnes Garn Lina and Sandnes Garn Thin Lina. So starting with Lina, again, color selection, which is actually the same of Thin Lina, or more or less the same of Thin Lina. So when it comes to Lina, you would have a composition which is 53% cotton, 33% viscose, and 14% linen. So one of the things that I don't like a lot about these yarn, and also about Thin Lina, is that Lina, I don't know exactly what it means in Danish, but it makes me think about linen. But actually the linen composition, linen percentage of the fabric is just 14%. And like, guys, maybe we should say that and underline that, but I don't know. Well, marketing of course has its course. Sandnes Garn Linen is sold in 50 grams balls, and for each ball you will have 110 meters. So when it comes to gauge, you will have 20 stitches per 10 centimeters, and the cost is €5.50. When it comes to Thin Lina, you will have again a great color selection, and the yarn composition is actually the same of Lina. The only thing that changes is of course the thinness of the yarn, because Thin Lina is thinner than Lina. So for a 50-gram ball you will have 220 meters, and the gauge swatch changes of course, so you would have 27 stitches per 10 centimeters instead of the 20 stitches per 10 centimeters that you had with linen. And again, the price remains the same, so it's again 5.50 euros for a ball. Again, I'm very curious to try it, because I know that a lot of knitters worked with Lina or Thin Lina, and I'm also very curious to try cotton linen blends, because I think that this could make the perfect fabric and a perfect garment for spring and summer. Then I have other two recommendations. So the first one is Elisa Trio 2. This one is a blend of 50% linen, 30% cotton, and 20% lyocell. For each ball, you would have for each ball of 50 grams, you would have 175 meters. And what else should I say? I should say that the gauge again of Trio 2 used knitted with 3 or 3.5 millimeter needles would be 26 stitches per 34 rows. But again, the Elisa website, as I was telling you before, is very precise, and it gives you also information on the gauge for Trio 2 used with alpaca 1, alpaca 2, and held double. So about the price, this comes, each 50 gram ball is sold at 8.75 euros. What can I say again? The color selection is slightly better than that of Organic, and it's a bit more summery, let's say. So I think that I would like to try working with this yarn actually. Yeah, it could be a great idea. And again, I'm also very curious to try Elisa Bomulin, which is a blend of 65% cotton and 35% linen. The colors are just my colors, because look at those greens. I just love green. I just love green. I would always wear green, could you tell? So when it comes to meterage, for each 50-gram ball you would have 210 meters, so a pretty good meterage actually. And when it comes to gauge, when you use bombing with the 3mm needles, your gauge should be 26 stitches per 32 rows. The price is not that high, because it's 50 Danish crowns for a 50-gram ball, which should be more or less 7 euros, something like that. So I'm very curious to try also this yarn. Okay guys, so this was all for the plant fibers, and now I'll talk a little bit about the animal fibers that I would love to use for spring and summer knits. So this was a bit harder, because of course when you think about animal fibers, the first thing that comes to your mind is of course wool, but wool is probably a bit too warm sometimes. So, and of course I had to include something else, and this something else is silk. So silk is of course an animal fiber, because it is sourced from the cocoon that will then turn into butterflies. But silk at the same time presents a problem to me, which is the fact that in order to produce silk, the chrysalids, so the stage after the cocoon, let's say, needs to be boiled in order to extract the long silk thread that it has produced. So let's say that this is not the most ethic process ever, and I would say that I'm not I'm not very good at explaining this, but I will link a video that I found very useful of Giulia by Wool and Twine Fiber Studio. She's probably my favorite yarn dyer. Like, I love her work, and she was able to create a line of mohair, which was produced with ethically sourced mohair and ethically sourced silk. And so she explained very well this thing about silk. And when I discovered it as a vegetarian, almost vegan, I was like shocked, and I told myself that I would probably never work again with silk, like with mohair, unless it is ethically produced. Fortunately for us, I have some yarn suggestions that also take into account this thing. But first of all, a little bit more about silk. You should know that it drapes very well. It doesn't shrink or stretch very much, and it is one of the most resistant and robust fibers ever. So it isn't prone to peeling, on the contrary, of course, other animal fibers such as wool and especially alpaca peel a lot. It is very smooth and exceptionally strong. The disadvantages of silk are that it's weak when wet, it is prone to fading, and this is something that a lot of people who have worked with the silk yarns and silk blends have underlined. And one other thing that they underline is that maybe knitting with silk, because of its stiffness and because of the fact that it's not bouncy at all, it's not very pleasurable as an experience. And of course, one of the major disadvantages is that silk is very expensive. because of the production method, of course, that is behind silk. But as I was telling you, I have some suggestions which take into account the fact that silk could be not the most ethically produced yarn ever. And the first one is Knitting for Olive Pure Silk, of course. So Knitting for Olive Pure Silk is sold in 50-gram balls, and for each ball you will have 250 meters, and the gauge is 28 stitches per 38 rows. As you can see in the description, it's written that the little butterfly on the label indicates that the chrysalids were allowed to evolve into butterflies, thereby allowing them to complete their life cycle. So I think that if I had to choose one silk yarn to work with, it would probably be the Knitting for Olive Pure Silk. When it comes to price, it's sold on the Knitting for Olive website for €9.07. And one of the things that I think I prefer about the Knitting for Olive Pure Silk, as for the Knitting for Olive yarns in general, is the color selection, because I think that this is the colors available are very springy, are very summery, and yeah. And I also love that for each typology of color, let's say, like for each green, for each blue, for each I don't know, pink, that you have both a warm tone and a cold tone. And I think that this makes it possible for a lot of people to find the perfect shade or the perfect color that they are looking for. Then when it comes to other silk yarn recommendations, I have one which is Ito Kinu. So Kinu is a yarn by Ito, which is a Japanese yarn brand. Again, the pictures that you're seeing on the website are by by Giulia of Wooldan, because of the same reason, because of the fact that she is able to capture the colors in a perfect way and to show the differences among the colors. Ito Kinu is a 100% silk. It's 100% silk, and it's also called organic silk, as it is produced from the leftovers of spun filament silk. So it is not explained whether this silk is produced in a way that the chrysalides are able to evolve, are able to complete their life cycle or not. But I think that again, this is slightly better than other things that you could find on the market. This yarn is very nice. I find it very nice because you could have a melange effect that is very trendy this year, actually. About the specifics of the yarn, so it's sold in 50 grams ball, and for each actually in cones, and for each cone you would have 425 meters. The recommended needles are 2 or 3 millimeter needles, but you could also knit with it double-stranded. So in that case, the recommended needle size would be 3.5 or 4.5 millimeter needles. So it's sold actually. For example, on the Wooldan website, it's sold, it has a bit of a higher price because it's sold for 11.90 euros. So, but again, this is silk. And if you consider that also Knitting for Olive has a €9 price point, let's say that this is actually on the average side. And I have one other recommendation. Actually, I have one other yarn that I would love to try, which is by BC Garn. and this yarn by BC Garn is soft silk. So again, it's 100% silk, and it's sold in 100 grams skein, and for each skein you would have 350 meters. Recommended needle size 3.5 millimeter needles, and the gauge is 20 stitches per 10 centimeters. So in this case the price would be around 18.5 euros. And one thing that I love is the color selection. Again, it's just perfect. It's just that they have so many colors, it would be very hard to choose, and so many like pink shades, so many green shades and blue shades. I just love the fact that you could choose to that it would be very hard to choose a color. When it comes to animal fibers, of course, the first thing that comes to your mind would be wool, but wool is not perfect for summer and spring, and for this reason I decided to include some wool cotton blends, because I think that this is what I prefer in general. So when it comes to summer knits, I usually tend towards using some wool and cotton blends, and for this reason, in this case, I have 2 yarn recommendations and 1 yarn that I would be very curious to try. When it comes to again blends of wool and cotton, you could have the best of both worlds. So one of the things that I don't like a lot about cotton is that it's very drapey, that it's very, in the end, the garments could be very slouchy, and I don't like that. But when it's combined with wool, which has that bounciness and that stiffness to it sometimes, I feel that that problem that you normally have with cotton yarns is completely cancelled, like it doesn't exist anymore. So, as I was telling you, I have 2 yarn recommendations. The first one is Coast by Holstgarn. I just love Holstgarn yarns, let me state that. Like, I know that a lot of people don't really enjoy working with them, but I think that they're very soft on the skin. And maybe, yes, maybe the knitting experience is not the best, but when it comes to finished objects, I think that you could have a great finished object. So Coast is sold in 50 grams cake balls, and for each cake ball you would have 350 meters. When it comes to gauge, when you knit it with 1 thread at needles 2.53 millimeters needles, you would have approximately 26 stitches per 10 centimeters, but you could also work with 2 threads of Coast, and in that case you would have approximately 21 stitches per 10 centimeters. So when it comes to composition, it is made of 55% cotton and 55% merino wool and 45% cotton. And one thing that I need to stress is just the quantity of colorways available. This always shocks me. Like, every time I go on the Holstgarn website and I try to choose a color, that takes at least 2 days. Like, I could never decide. One thing that I like, because I tried working with Holstgarn cotton, actually I have here these, like, sorry guys, I made a mess. I have here this shawl that I started for my grandma some months ago, actually, which is made with Holstgarn Coast, double-stranded. So this is actually the Victoria scarf, which I'm turning into a shawl. I'm knitting with it double stranded, and you could see how saturated the colors are. This is crimson, if I'm not wrong. And yeah, the thread is very thin, as you can see. But when you knit it with it double stranded, it's very pleasurable, I would say. It's not the softest yarn, and I think that this is because, of course, of the wool content, but I think that it has what I was telling you before, so that perfect matching and combination of wool and cotton. And the price of the yarn is really on the cheaper side, because for a cake bowl of those you would spend only €3.86, so it's very cheap. Another yarn recommendation that I have for you is from what is probably my favorite yarn shop ever, which is Retrosaria Rosa Pomar in Lisbon. And the yarn that I'm talking about is Coast. So Coast is actually very similar to Holst-Garn Coast, but this one is Retrosaria. So it has a composition which is exactly the same of Holst-Garn Coast, which is 55% merino wool and 45% cotton. For each 50-gram ball you would have a 350 meters, and again the gauge is 26 stitches per 10 centimeters. Again, you would have a great color selection, and I just love to look at all the shades. And actually it's a bit pricier, because it costs €5.15 for each ball. Actually, I'm wearing something that I made with Holst-Garn, with Retrosaria Rosa Pomar Coast, which is this Musetti by Osetta. The experience was wonderful. I've worked with 3mm needles, if I'm not wrong, and I really like the experience, and I really like how this yarn is on the skin, because it's very soft, but at the same time it doesn't stretch, so it always has that cropped look that I gave it when I cast it off, let's say. Yeah, one thing that I would say is that still this yarn, this wool cotton blend, is not the best when you live in Italy, because that is very hot. But probably, like, I wear it anyways, because I would sweat even wearing a bikini or something else, so it doesn't matter. At least I'm wearing hand knits. But yeah, the working experience is, the knitting experience is just wonderful, and I really recommend Retrosaria Rosa Pomar's yarns, because so far have had just the best experience, both in the shop and when it comes to knitting with their yarns. To conclude these, let's call it roundup / recommendation / rambling about summer yarn, I have one yarn that I would really love to try, that caught my eyes, and this is the famous Saona by Wool Dreamers. So Saona is again a blend of 50% merino and 50% cotton, so slightly different from the previous two yarns that I talked to you about. It's sold in 50 grams ball, and for each ball you would have 220 meters, and the gauge swatch would be 26 stitches per 32 rows, with recommended needle size of 2mm / 3.5mm needles. The price of the yarn is €6.10, and I'm very curious. Like, I think that the color selection was created in collaboration with Osetta, And yeah, maybe you don't have that many colors, but I think that they are very well chosen, that they are very well thought, and the neutrals make these yarns perfect for staple garments. So I'm very curious to try it actually. I think that this was all actually. So as I told you before, I have not included all the yarns that I could, all the fibers that I could, just because of a question of time, because I don't know for how long I've talked, but it was a lot. So maybe if you enjoyed this video, we can do another one in which I talk about other knitting fibers, the ones that I just left out from this video. For me, it was very useful. It was very fun as always. Like planning my knits and planning the yarns that I like to use is just another hobby, exactly as knitting. So I really hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you did, yeah, just give me a like, give it a like, because this would help me a lot. And you could also share it with someone else, with some of your knitting friends maybe. And you could also follow me here, subscribe on the channel, or follow me on Instagram. I would like to thank you a lot, because you are giving me so much support. Also in my previous videos, I could have never imagined such a huge response from you guys. And let me know what you would like to see next in the comment. Like, would you prefer a pattern roundup for these yarns? Would you prefer other yarns? Would you prefer maybe a knitting podcast episode? Because it's been a while. So guys, thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next one. And of course,